Have you ever tried to explain how someone hurt you and somehow ended up being the one who apologized? You came into the conversation with a legitimate grievance, and you left it feeling guilty, confused, like you were the problem all along. That did not happen by accident. Welcome to People Decoded, the science of why people treat you the way they do. Today we are talking about one of the most psychologically exhausting dynamics you can find yourself in, the person who always plays the victim, and what is actually happening in their psychology when they do it. The first thing to understand is that victim mentality is not the same as genuinely being a victim. Everyone gets hurt. Everyone faces hard things. That is not what we are talking about. What we are talking about is a pattern, a consistent, repeating pattern where one person positions themselves as the wronged party in every conflict, every conversation, every relationship, regardless of what actually happened. Psychologists call this a victim identity. It is when victimhood stops being a temporary state and becomes a permanent self-concept, a lens through which every interaction gets filtered. And it is one of the most powerful psychological defense mechanisms there is. Here is why it works so well. When someone frames themselves as a victim, they gain something psychologists call secondary gain. Sympathy, attention, the moral high ground. And most importantly, they gain immunity from accountability. Because you cannot hold a victim responsible. The moment you try, you become the aggressor. And they know it. Not always consciously, but their psychology has learned that this position is safe, that it deflects criticism, that it shifts the focus from what they did to how they feel about being confronted. This is backed by research on what psychologists call the Darvo response. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. It was identified by researcher Jennifer Freed, and it describes exactly what happens when certain people are held accountable. They deny what happened. They attack the person confronting them. And then they reverse the roles. Suddenly, they are the one who has been wronged by the very act of being confronted. Sound familiar? The second mechanism is something called learned helplessness. First identified by psychologist Martin Seligman, it describes what happens when someone comes to believe that their actions have no real impact on their outcomes, that things just happen to them, that they are always at the mercy of other people and circumstances. Over time, this belief becomes self-reinforcing. If nothing you do matters, then nothing is ever your fault. If you are always at the mercy of others, then others are always to blame. The victimhood is not performed. It is genuinely believed, and that makes it almost impossible to challenge directly. So what do you do when someone in your life operates this way? First, stop trying to win the argument. You will not. The game is rigged. Every attempt you make to explain your perspective becomes evidence of your aggression. Every boundary you set becomes proof of your cruelty. The goal is not to be right. The goal is to stay clear about your own reality even when theirs is designed to overwrite it. Second, name the pattern without attacking the person. There is a difference between saying you always make everything about yourself and saying, I notice that when I bring up something that hurt me, the conversation shifts to how you are feeling. One is an attack, one is an observation. Observations are harder to Darvo. Third, protect your energy. People with victim identities are not broken. They are operating on a strategy that has worked for them. But being in close proximity to that strategy is exhausting, draining, and over time it distorts your own sense of reality. You start questioning whether you are always the problem. You start apologizing for things that are not yours to own. You are not the problem. You are just the person who kept trying to have a real conversation with someone who was never actually in the room with you. If this decoded something for you, subscribe to People Decoded. Every week we go deeper into the psychology of how people behave, and why understanding it changes everything. Stay curious,